Yeah.
There we go. All right, now bring it up in case it's comments. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Uh, Hi, everybody. Welcome to Gen X Book Club. And I'm here along with Suzanne once again. Hey, Suzanne.
Hi
And
there.
we're going to be breaking a couple of rules here, talking about a certain book and movie. But
Taking a big risk.
yeah. Um, I should, of course, we're going to be talking about Fight Club. Ooh, I feel dirty saying that. Yeah. Somebody's gonna come beat me up. No, you're breaking the rules.
Right.
But I should say that if you haven't read the book or watched the movie, there's like some major spoilers that I don't think we'll have a choice but to touch on them, for it to make sense and everything. So you definitely want
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
check everything out first before you watch this because yeah, there's a huge twist.
Yeah,
So
we'll ruin it. We'll completely ruin it for you. So
yeah.
go watch it or read it now.
Yeah,
Then
we'll
come
be
back.
here.
Yeah. Then come back and watch the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, be here, right here, waiting for you. Um, and since I usually post this, for my under the Gen X Journeys feed on Wednesdays. So what do we call it? Like the my main flagship. It's a flagship podcast here that I'm posting
There you
this
go.
on. So so I do have some awesome Gen X stuff that happened this week, and I got to see for the first and last time Barry Manilow in concert. It's his farewell tour, I guess. So yeah, I wonder if he's going to be playing in Vegas or something. But yeah, supposedly this is his farewell tour, and we found out that he's 81, and somebody had posted today that he's going to be turning 82 this month. So yeah, I can see why he wouldn't want to be doing this tour, but
Gotta
I
be
do,
tiring.
yeah. Like he still has like a great voice. He still sounds the same, but um you can tell it's an effort for him getting it out. I mean, he is 81 and he's been doing this for a long
Hmm.
time, so it's understandable. But he still sounded great, and I've been to so many awesome shows in my lifetime, and this was probably one of the best shows I've ever seen because he's just a natural
Nice.
entertainer, storyteller. He told some great stories. There was one, and it also inspiring because he talked about when he was first starting out, he worked as a music teacher, and during the day, and then at night he would play at clubs and stuff. So it just shows again, we talk about these memoirs and everything, how hardworking all these entertainers are,
Yeah, that's
and that's
true.
just further proof of it. They really put everything into it, and that's how they're that successful. It's not an accident; it just doesn't fall in their laps. So he put a lot of work
Hmm.
in. So he would do play gigs at night and everything, and he told the story that he even took a job at a hospital before playing. And when my grandmother in her final day, she was in a nursing home in the hospital, and at the nursing home, every once in a while a band would come in and play. They'd play like big band music, so I'd go there and watch it with her and everything. So it must have been that type of thing. So he was playing in the hospital, he
Hmm.
did his gig, and then afterwards he was talking to a patient that wasn't looking too good. So Barry said to the patient, "Oh, I hope you get better." And then the patient said, "Well, I hope you do too."
Well, at least he kept a sense of humor,
Yeah,
even in hospice or whatever was going on.
yeah.
Poor guy.
I just thought, oh, it was so funny, and I think to myself, yeah, I think he did. I think he did. He did get better. But it's like
That's
that
funny.
self-deprecate. Yeah, it's like that self-deprecating humor. He's so funny. And then of course I'm in Rhode Island, so he did Weekend in New England, and
That's my
uh,
favorite. That's my
yeah,
favorite of his.
my two,
He did
and
that.
then mhm.
He did that at Rockefeller Center too when I saw him sing.
Oh
And
really?
then he did like 4 or 5 songs, but that was one of them.
Yeah, yeah, that's like one of my favorite songs. And then when he got to the second verse, it starts with "Time in New England," and then the whole place just exploded. And then he stopped,
Mm.
and then he looks at us. He goes, "Oh, you like that, huh?" And "Time in New England." He did it again. The place just went nuts. And then he did it a third time. And then he went into the song. He's like so much fun. Yeah, yeah. They even did
Nice.
a cappella of oh no, just let my brain the William Tell overture. They did that like with
Oh,
these backup
really?
singers and stuff. Oh, so good. Yeah, yeah.
That
So
sounds challenging.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They pulled it off. It was incredible. That's what I mean. This is such a great show. So yeah. So if you're able to see him somehow, I highly recommend it for sure. Yeah, as I grew up listening to him because my parents. They had the live 8 tracks. I grew up listening to that. Between him and Neil Diamond was my mom's favorite singer.
Yeah,
So
my mom too.
well, yeah, yeah.
We had Neil Diamond albums, the
Yeah, yeah.
70s were
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Sit on a shag rug carpet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The,
All
the
right.
paneled walls, we had the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
All right. So yeah, now we'll go from light, fluffy warmth of Barry Manilow to the dark and gritty Fight Club.
Oh, God. It's disturbed, mentally twisted.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, literally. Yeah. It's written by Chuck Palahniuk, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
I think
And
so.
yeah, and the book itself was published August 17th, 1996, in the W. Norton and Company. And then as what happens a lot here, we have books that are also movies. So let me see if I got the movie list here. Yep, so the movie was released in 1999. It was directed by David Fincher. And yep, it was released October 15th, 1999. And it made 101 million worldwide. It's modest, but then it ended up getting a cult status when it hit home video. And I think that's pretty much when I found out about the movie itself. And again, we mentioned the twists and stuff, and this was a time when there was like seemed to be a trend of movies with huge twists because this was around the time that The Sixth Sense came out.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, and that's maybe one of the few movies that really got you in the end. They had you the
mm,
whole way through, and then in the end, they kind of destroyed your whole reality. So
yeah,
uh, it's hard. I mean, contemporary audiences are pretty darn jaded. You see stuff
mm,
coming, so it's hard and it's really a shock to the system when somebody can conceal the real story from you until the very end like that. And once
yeah,
again, yeah, you're gonna hear some if you don't know this story, you're gonna hear some things that you don't want to hear that'll, completely destroy the process for you if you haven't
yeah,
seen it yet or read it
yeah,
yet. It's hard to say because the two pieces, both the book and the film, are so parallel and so well, one reflects the other so well, which is, rare,
yeah,
that
yeah.
it's almost like the same experience. So do one or the other, but, you know, do it before you talk about
Yeah.
it. That's why you're not supposed to talk about it. It's kind of
Yeah.
brilliantly, that's part of the I mean, it's the rules, to Fight Club, but it's the rules to Fight Club because it's the rules that kept the character in the dark as to what was actually going on in his head
That's true.
till the very end as well. So
Hmm.
just every little detail was so like perfectly crafted to get you to the conclusion. So it's it all falls together like blows your mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's not like they did any like shortcuts or cheapened it. That there's Yeah, they didn't do any trickery or anything. When you find out the twist, then it's like, oh,
Mhm.
and then it just like Sixth Sense. Then
Yeah.
when you know what happened, then it's like watching a totally different movie the second time around. So,
Right, right. But you want to go back and say, how did I not
uh,
realize
right,
what
exactly.
was happening? And you watch it again and just see how clever it was
Hmm.
in making sense either way
Yep.
and not tipping you off until the very end. Like you can tell, especially in the book, like reading it again. I've seen the movie several times, but I hadn't reread the book since the 90s when it first came out. Um, but in reading it again, I was a little more attuned to how the author slowly dropped the clues that well, I don't know. When are we going to announce what the big ending is here? I don't know how quickly we want to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I don't even know how to do it actually. I wasn't sure how he was gonna actually do it in the book, but the the narrator who in the oh I should also say for if you want to picture the characters, uh Edward Norton played the narrator, who conveniently didn't have a name.
Yes, I know. I don't think I noticed that the first time I read
Yeah,
or
me
saw
neither.
this. We never know his real name.
No, no.
And
Even in the
once again,
book.
that's yeah, in the book or in the film, we never
Mhm.
get a real name.
Yeah.
And that's part of his whole persona where he was going to the um the support groups in the beginning
Yeah.
because he couldn't sleep, so he was advised by a doctor, hey, you'll feel better about yourself if you start going to some of these support groups and see what people are really dealing with out there. But every time he went to a support group he used a fake name, a different one.
Right. Mhm.
So and that was you saw that both in the book and in the film, and it just all leads to this symptom. It's not just the label, it's symptomatic of the fact that he's okay, da 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 da, he's schizophrenic.
Yeah.
and and maybe not at the beginning of the well, not maybe not say in the time where he's first describing himself,
Hmm.
but he nosedives into it in the story, and you can kind of see why. But
Yeah.
it starts. I think he starts falling into that
It's,
pit there
yeah.
from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. Then spirals. Yeah. Speaking of Pitt, Brad Pitt played Tyler
Well, yeah,
Durden.
that's true. Maybe that was Freudian. I don't know.
Yeah, another yeah, that was by design as
Yeah,
well.
right. I don't think it was. Maybe it was. I don't know.
And then Helena Bonham Carter as Marla Singer, and she was incredible.
Yeah,
in it. Yeah. And
absolutely. Oh, they were all incredible.
yeah,
There,
everybody,
there
yeah.
were. It was amazing performances.
Mhm.
And if you I looked up a few things. If you look
Mhm.
up this author and what he looks like, they could pass for each other.
Right.
Like he was kind of this nameless, kind of, nebbishy type of guy who's probably just, sleepwalking through his job and,
Mhm.
wearing the tie and feeling strangled, and which is quite a comparison to Brad Pitt's character, who it was brilliant casting because Brad Pitt is got the jaw and the hair and the clothing. He's dressed in all these wild jackets and bright red leather and fur, and
Mhm.
it's just it's perfect once you realize who exactly he is, that he's the mental alter ego of the narrator,
Yep.
which I love that he starts describing from the beginning, I know this because Tyler knows this. And you
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
to yourself, oh, yeah, well, this is his friend, and his friend is giving him information and kind of schooling him. There's like almost like a mentor type of relationship going on. But
Mhm.
that's not why he knows the things that Tyler knows.
Yes, like literally, yeah, yeah. Again, it's like written
They,
perfect. It's written perfectly brilliantly because you could take it from whatever perspective you want. Yeah.
mm,
It's a he literally knows, but yeah, because he has a split personality.
yeah, because they're the same person.
Yep.
So that's why I know this because Tyler knows this, because they're the same person.
Yeah.
But yet we don't realize that it's not, I know this because Tyler knows this because this is what he taught me. That's kind of that's how you read it in the beginning.
Yep.
And
Yep.
one of those things where
Exactly.
you go back and say, geez, I didn't even think. I didn't even think it could be anything like that. So
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that really hit. Yeah.
just brilliant.
Hmm. And then I totally forgot that Meatloaf was in this.
Yeah,
So
he was good too. Not that he had
yeah.
that much to do.
Hmm.
He cried a lot.
Yeah.
He cried, he sobbed a lot in the early scenes in the support groups, in the cancer support groups.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yep. uh, yeah. So yeah, yeah, I was kind of confused, but yeah, I think he started developing this because he had the sleep disorder. He couldn't sleep, and yeah, but then he was able to sleep when he went to these support groups. It was kind of a release for him. But then because he would cry these and it would be a release for him, and then he'd be able to sleep. But then he started seeing Marla start popping up at these same things, doing the same thing as him. And it pissed him off. He'd be like, fake, fake, phony. Meanwhile, he's doing the same thing.
I know, because then he's looking at her and realizing, that he's just as vulnerable to be exposed as a fake. And it's
Mhm.
just, like he was horning in on his gig. Even though it was a bizarre gig. It's just such a strange concept for someone to be so lacking in support in their life that they have to go to support groups for people who are tragically ill.
Right,
That's just it's a bizarre thing to begin with. So the
yeah,
two of them, him and Marla, were kind of meant for each other from the start. They're both
right,
cracked,
yeah,
but he just doesn't know how cracked he is
yeah.
until later.
Yeah, and then at one point, because in the film it would show Edward Norton and Brad Pitt together, and then uh, yeah, the narrator Edward Norton, he got a call from Marlo saying that she was gonna kill herself. I think did she take pills or something?
Yeah.
But then he just left. He just left the phone off the hook, and then Brad Pitt comes over and picks up the phone, and then he ends up going over and rescuing her, and then they start seeing each other. But then in the movie, you would Edward Norton would be hearing them having sex upstairs. So
Yeah, constantly, very
like,
loudly. He's hearing them the whole time. And, that's driving him crazy because he can't sleep as it is. So he's
mhm,
hearing everything. Uh, but even that is really cleverly done.
mhm.
There was one moment, I think the first time that he heard them together, and we have to call him Ed Norton because we don't have a name for the
Right.
character.
Yeah.
So Ed walks
Yeah.
up to the door, which is open just a bit, and
Mhm.
sees them in there. And suppose, Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden comes to the door, swings it open, and I think she goes rolling off the back of the bed and
Oh
is
yeah.
disappears for a second. And
Mhm.
so they're talking, he's like, oh, you want to come in? And as Ed Norton leaves, Marla pops her head up from the other side of the bed and says, "Who are you talking to?"
Hmm.
And you don't realize that he's talking to himself, that there's nobody there. There's no
Right.
conversation going on. There aren't two people in that conversation. It was only
Right. Yeah.
one. But you don't realize, it's just like it doesn't even register
Hmm.
that she's saying who you're talking to because there's nobody there.
Yeah. He's
So
literally talking to
it's
himself.
just bizarre. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And those are there's moments like that through the whole film where she's so confused as to what the hell is going on with him
Hmm.
because he's not the same person anytime that she's with him. So sometimes you really feel sympathy for her, as
Hmm.
bizarre as she is and suicidal, and she's just a strange, strange woman. But in the end, I think she's like the only one who has her head together by the
Yeah.
time that they're done.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah, that another thing I noticed too, second time watching the movie is that she was never in the room at the same time as both of them. So
yeah,
when
it's
she'd
true.
be in the room with one, the other one would leave the room, and then she'd be in the room with one of them, and then the other way around.
Yes, it was all very carefully choreographed.
Yeah, and Tyler
But
told
I
told to Ed not to mention him or something
Right,
like
you
that.
can't talk about me,
Protect that.
just like you can't talk about Fight
Yeah,
Club
Fight
and you
Club.
can't
Yeah.
ask questions about Project Mayhem. All these rules were fabricated for the things that were going on in his house, that because they weren't actually happening. So in his mind, he was finding ways to justify and protect the delusions that he was having.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but from other things that I've read, I think that's actually consistent with people who are delusional. They will kind of incorporate into the delusion ways to justify why other people can't interact with their delusion. Like,
Hmm.
did you ever see A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe?
Oh, yeah, ages ago. I don't remember too much about it.
Yeah, well, it was kind of similar where he was married and everything, and for years he was having conversations with people who like a roommate from college that never existed. It was a delusion.
Uh,
He made him up, but the wife didn't realize because he had made up such clever and consistent justifications for why they were never together in the same room.
mhm.
And even in the film, when they depicted it, was the same thing, where they went in and out of his life, but never interacted directly with anyone else in the picture.
Mhm.
So I think not just, well, it's consistent in the film because then, that's how they trick us when you go
Yep.
back and look at it. But I
Yeah.
think that's consistent because that's the way people's minds work when they are that deep into an emotional break or,
Mhm.
mental break. So,
Mhm. Yep. Oh, and they were living in this apartment because Ed's apartment blew up. And,
yeah.
and then they can find out later on that, he's the one that did it himself. Like he didn't even know that well, maybe Tyler did it, but
Yeah, well, in the end, Tyler did do it.
yeah.
His alter ego. And the fact that, okay, we start the book with the insomnia that he's suffering. And it turns out even that it was a physical manifestation of the fact that he was schizophrenic because he wasn't not sleeping. He was living as some other person during those periods that he thought he was trying to sleep.
Right.
He was just an alternate version of himself.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yep.
So even that, once again, he's was justifying the whole time.
Yep. And then yeah, and then I don't know how it started, but Tyler told told Ed to that's how the whole Fight Club started. And then I read that they actually did real punches, like David Fincher told him to do a real punch, and then so that was authentic when Brad Pitt's like, "Oh, my ear." That was like his real reaction because he wasn't
Really?
expecting. Yeah, so he
See,
really
that I
hit him.
didn't know. I didn't know that they
Yeah,
actually hit each
yeah.
other. Yikes. It is,
So
the fighting is impressively authentic looking. I'll tell you, if they actually were fighting, I'd believe it. But even there are periods where Ed Norton is beating himself up
yeah,
and either pretending that someone else is, like he does this whole bit with his boss
boss.
to
Yeah,
try and make the
mhm.
security guards think that
That the
the
boss is
boss
doing
is
that.
beating up on Ed Norton, when
Mhm.
actually he's tossing himself around through glass tables and punching himself and dragging himself by the that's eh, that's got to be hard to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Convincingly beat yourself up.
yeah. So that's another good point because when you find out that they're two separate people, is how does he beat himself up? But he was really good at it in the office there, and that's
Yeah,
it,
and that's
that
how the Fight Club started. He was beating
yeah,
himself up.
himself up. Yeah, and people saw him doing that, and they came over.
Yeah, and they all got into it.
hmm Yeah,
Which just the whole existence of see the one of the cool things about the book, well, about the ether, is the fact that the things that they were doing were almost they were kind of like sort of vigilante style. Um, what they were doing as waiters, and what they were doing in Project Mayhem, and even what they were doing in Fight Club. It was all seemed to be things that had some level of justification where, all right, where we're being like, now people would frown on this all as like, toxic masculinity or what have you,
right. Hmm
but they were exercising their aggression,
Right.
but in a positive way. I mean, it was not positive in that they were beating the hell out of each other, but voluntarily
Yeah, in a
and
controlled
for the
environment.
purpose, yeah, of taking control of that, right?
Mm.
Or even when they were in the end they wanted to like, or Tyler did wanted to like bring an end to civilization, but it was kind of for the purpose of freeing people from,
hmm
their bills and their attachment to their furniture and their things and their, like there was just like he was somehow trying to right the wrongs of society with all these crazy things he was doing,
hmm
where you could almost see that he was trying to be a good guy, as crazy as he
Right.
was.
Yeah,
So it was bizarre.
yeah, yeah. That's another thing that makes us good is doing these crazy things, but you can see how uh, they thought they were doing the right thing, but not doing the right. They're not
Yeah,
doing
in
the
a
right thing, but
twisted
they think
way.
that
Yeah.
yeah. It's like a good villain in a movie that they see themselves as justified for doing what they're doing, and
It's
that's
true,
what
but
kind of
that's the best kind of villain. That's the one
yeah,
that you can kind
exactly.
of stand behind and almost say, I get it.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to put you in jail, but I get it. I get what you were doing.
Mhm. A great example of that was, I feel like it was like a powerful scene in the movie is when he got that guy and took his license and he's threatening to kill
Yeah,
the guy.
that's,
He's
yeah.
what I guess he had started going to school, but he stopped, and then he was asking him what he was going to school for, and he kind of talked him into, you know, going back to school and living his dreams of what he wanted to do. But the way he went about
Mhm.
it was not the
Yeah,
best
by
way.
putting
But
a gun to
threatened him,
his head
yeah, and I
and
have
saying, all
you,
right, you're going to die
yeah, if you
today.
don't,
Oh, you know what? Yeah, if you'll die unless you go back to school. You're going to go back to school and do the things that you just said that you were supposed to do with your life, which you wanted to be a vet or something like that.
yeah,
And then that kid ran off, and Norton was saying, "This isn't funny. What are you doing?" And Tyler says he's going to wake up tomorrow. It's going to be the best day of his
best
life.
saves life.
Food is going to taste better, and the sun is going to be brighter, that's true. I guess that's
hmm
true. But he had to have a moment of being completely terrorized and
Right.
maybe thinking for the rest of his life that somebody was going to be around the corner waiting to shoot him if he didn't become
Mm,
a vet.
right.
So it's true. That's probably the best example of he really thought that he was doing something good for society and for that guy who was on his knees with a gun to his head. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And that's the thing with this too. All these people that went to the Fight Club, they had these jobs, leading these empty lives and everything, but then they got to be themselves. Like you said, like not that aggression, their natural aggression out. So,
yeah, and he kind of said they could be Joe Schmo who was just like, slinging hash at a diner or something, but at the Fight Club, then you're a god because you can beat the hell out of somebody. And
mhm.
it seemed, it's just controlled to a certain degree, but I mean, disgusting. Like watching it on film was disgusting. Listening
That
to
was
it in your
brutal.
head when you're reading it was disgusting.
Yeah, that was tough reading it as
It was
well, right?
disgusting.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, again, so well written though, but yeah, because it really puts you
Oh
in
yeah.
there and you know what they're feeling, and yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, it's funny too that you mentioned the tie, like he's like tied and everything, but then as it goes on, he's getting more rebellious at work, and he just comes as he wants, and he's like all his face is all jacked up and everything, and I
Yeah.
think he left the he made photocopies of the rules of the Fight Club, and he left them in the copy machine. So then the boss found them, and he's
Yeah.
reading to what's all this?
Yeah, he did that more than once. So you have to think that he did that on
On
purpose so that he
purpose.
could kind of
Mhm.
out himself. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that's when he beat the crap out of himself in front of his boss
Mhm.
and tried to make it look like the boss did it,
Just do it. Yeah.
and like blackmailed. Okay, all right. So this is something that we have to delve into. I
Mhm.
think the reason that he lost his marbles and went schizophrenic to begin with is because he had a job
Mhm.
where he had to go see crash and evaluate crash sites where people had died. He worked for a car company. He had to evaluate accidents where people burned to death and died in spectacular, horrible ways, and kind of justify whether the company was going to do a recall based on that, depending on whether it was too expensive,
Mhm.
or he had like a whole formula that he had to go through, and sometimes they didn't do the recall because it would be would be less expensive to let people die.
Yeah.
And I think the guilt of that made him just have to
Lose it.
bifurcate,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
become, yeah, he just lost it. uh
Disassociate. Yeah.
right. So in the end, he found a way to get out of that job,
Mhm.
and he blackmailed the company into sending him, however much of his salary continuously, even if he didn't do his job. And
Do any
then
that.
he
Yeah.
said, "You'll never see me again." So, in a way, even that he got out of a job that he thought was a horrible way to make a living, and he couldn't go forward with anymore. But yet he still like kind of punished his company having to by blackmailing them, which is a
Yeah.
terrible thing to do. But if you're blackmailing the enemy, is
Right.
that bad, or are you punishing them?
Hmm.
So he just kept finding more and more twisted ways to kind of rectify things that he thought were
Hmm.
terrible in the world. But
Yeah.
I found that very interesting that from the beginning you knew he knew he had a job that he despised, that was despicable, and he couldn't justify anymore.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so crazy because there's a lot of that today. A lot of
Oh
don't
yeah,
want
I
to don't want
guess
to get
I
don't
guess
want to
so.
get political. If you look at ICE, what they're doing, so, a lot of those people don't want to be doing that job. It's a lot of you know, stuff going on where people are doing things that should be don't want to be doing, and the
Yeah, and
kind of
people
stuff.
resigning from their positions because they're being asked to do things against their uh, principles or what have you.
Right.
So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but at least our people aren't burning to death. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. That's
he
this is
was
a real
really in a
extreme.
position to see horrifying things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. But yeah, it just shows how timeless this is. I mean, you can probably put it in any time
Yeah.
period, really.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
yeah, because Yeah, I wonder how this would get made today, especially we touched on the toxic masculinity and all that, how that's a thing
Yeah,
now.
I don't think that anybody would publish but maybe you could write a screenplay like this
Hmm.
because Hollywood seems to be I mean um they have a lot of their own rules as far as what kind of principles they will uphold and not uphold. And I don't mean moral principles. I mean, their own kind of virtue signaling that they do in Hollywood. There's
Hmm.
plenty of that, but I think it's far worse in the publishing industry. And I don't think anybody would publish this in a million years right now. As
Right.
freaking brilliant as it is, and it's really sad that this the state of things. But number one, unless the author actually was schizophrenic, I don't think they publish a book.
Right.
Like you would have to be severely schizophrenic to be able to write this story. Number one. Number
Hmm.
two, the violence that's in here is like triggering beyond belief. And I don't know. It's just everything is focused now kind of on like this marketability and everything being kind of exciting. And well, I guess I mean this was pretty exciting, but in a very dark way. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that no one would touch it. I think there's 10 million things in here that people would just say no. Triggering mental illness, that
Right.
not the author's is appropriating a mental state that he doesn't own personally. So it's very sad, but no, I don't think it would see the light of day.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, some quotes in here that would get to you like it's only after you've lost everything that you're free to do anything. So that's a big
True.
theme of this. Literally burning down their lives. They're blowing up the city literally and start new. That was another thing with the Project Mayhem. They were out of control. It started spreading, going to different cities and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite out of control.
Yeah, it was almost like I, yeah, kind of like cultish, right? That kind of it seemed to grow into
Yeah,
a cult, and they were even turning against Tyler there. Yeah,
right, right. He kind of
he
backed
could.
himself into such a corner with this idea, this vigilante ideology that he had going on that after a while it came back after him,
To
you
bite him,
know?
yeah. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yes, yeah, it was crazy. And then, it, yeah, in the movie, it started off like with the end when it showed, you know, Tyler, Brad Pitt having holding a gun in Ed Norton's mouth, and that's how it started. But now that we know at
Mhm.
this point at the end, we knew it was the same person. So he's holding the gun in his own mouth.
Right, right. And it was interesting how they did the transition there
Mm.
because when you get to that final scene where he's okay, if anybody hasn't seen it and tuned in, which was a mistake to begin with, but if we have to set the scene. um Ed Norton has been dragged to the top of this building after Project Mayhem, which is the cult that he and Tyler have created, and Tyler is really in his head. um and they're blowing up buildings all over the city to try and erase the banking records of the entire city slash country.
Mhm.
um and he's with Tyler, and now at this point he has realized that this is his alter ego, but he still sees him and is still being directed, being told what to do by him.
Yeah, still
And
attracted to
supposedly Tyler has a gun to Ed Norton's head, Moore's mouth, I think it was. And there's a moment where he says, "You're not really here. You don't have the gun. I have the gun."
Mhm.
And immediately the camera pans down and the gun is then in Ed Norton's hand.
Right.
Like it's just like kind of sleight of hand as we're watching. just
Yeah.
as easily as if, the perception would have changed in Ed's head. I
Yep.
mean, I think they represented that so seamlessly the moment that it occurred to him, you don't have a gun. Now you're not even here. You don't
Mhm.
have the gun. I have the gun. I'm in charge. And he did. I don't, this didn't really happen in the book.
No.
He he shot himself and survived it, but notice Tyler disappeared after that. Like he shot it out of him almost.
Yep.
That was an interesting way to deal with Tyler's demise, I guess.
Yeah, that's why he did it, was to get rid of Tyler. So yeah. Yeah. It
It was
was
bizarre.
yeah, it's different. Well,
Okay.
that was one of the
Um,
differences.
yeah, there were the end was different. I liked the end in the book. I hadn't even remembered the end in the book because I think the end in the film was so visually spectacular because you get to watch the skyscrapers falling and just like it's like Fourth of July for them, watching
Yeah.
fireworks or something. Um, but in the book, it's a little more psychological because we're all in his head in the whole book anyway. It's him narrating all this stuff, and we're in his head after he shot him, tried to kill himself, but he actually is in a mental institution, I think. But it
Yep.
takes us a little while to figure that out because he describes it like he thinks he died and went to heaven
Yeah.
and he's just floating around on Thorazine or whatever they've got him on. Except then we notice that Marla's coming to visit him, and I don't know, somebody else comes to visit him. I don't know, but we
Yeah.
realize in the end he's in the real world and he's being treated. Which is it was an interesting little twist, only because of the way he described it.
Yeah.
Like if it were a camera going in, and maybe that's why they didn't do this type of ending. If it were a camera and we were just like walking through a mental ward and saw him there, it
Right.
wouldn't have the same effect
Hmm.
as being in his head where he doesn't really know where he is. He thinks he died.
Hmm.
So it was
Yep. Yep.
weird.
Yeah. The author actually said that he liked the ending in the movie better.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a good
'Cause-
ending. It
yeah.
was a good
Yeah.
ending. Usually
Hmm.
I'm upset if the ending diverges. Like that one that the one with the
The
mist.
mist.
Oh man, I'm still pissed off at that. That was terrible.
Yeah,
That was
that was
terrible.
like the opposite. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was so bad. How could they do that to him? But anyway, okay. I so far you haven't brought it up. Now
Mhm.
you saw and did you see in my post where I said look for the splicing? Do you know
Uh,
what I'm talking about
um,
in the film?
it was, I didn't notice it, but was there something with they would do flashes of Brad Pitt? Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't notice it.
It's like the coolest freaking thing,
Uh,
which I did not notice when I first watched it. I don't know that any normal person would be able to notice it. Maybe on the big screen in the theater. I don't think I saw this I don't it's hard to remember. I don't think I first saw this in the theater. I think I read it and then I watched it, on video cassette or whatever was at the time.
mhm.
But there, like, okay, Tyler is one of his part-time jobs is he's a projectionist and he
Right. Yeah.
splices pornography into like, Disney films.
Hmm.
And the director of this film splices visions of Tyler into the scenes that we're watching
Hmm.
just for little
Yeah. So.
seconds before they meet. And it's
Hmm.
really what like it gives me goosebumps because now I can see it after seeing it a couple of times. And of course, you've got like the high definition TV and it's, this big. It's like practically a what movie screens used to be
Hmm.
like. So it's easier to pick it up. But there's three moments in there where you see Tyler like, leaning on somebody's shoulder. He's always like interacting with somebody, leaning on
Uh-huh.
somebody's shoulder, like a precursor to this person being created in his head. And it's
Hmm.
the wildest thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I
the
need to look for that next
wildest
time.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the wildest thing. He is in the scene with the doctor who the doctor tells him to, you're not going to die of insomnia. Go
Right.
to the support groups.
Hmm.
He's in the first scene where they're in the circle with the support group where he meets Bob
Yeah.
with their
That is
testicular
testicular
cancer.
cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, like the first scene there, he's standing with the therapist, and he is also there in the background, like the first moment that he meets Marla, I think.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
just for like a second. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's just such a brilliant idea.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like slowly, like that's how it starts, and then it like slowly, building up. Wow, yeah, yeah. And actually, I used
For
to when I
something.
mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
When I was in college, I forgot the name of the group was with I was with. We would do like all entertainment stuff, and we would do movies. Maybe once a month we would do movies. So I worked the projector, so I knew exactly what he was talking about because when it would get ready to change reels,
You
you
get the
see these
little
dots
circle.
flashing. Yeah, you
Yeah.
see the white dots. So that way you knew to turn on the next projector because it was like a certain amount of seconds after when you saw those lights that it was going to switch over. So yeah, I was a little familiar with
Yeah, see,
that.
I knew that too because my first job was with Columbia Pictures, and for some reason, they taught us that. I don't even know why. It's not like I worked with the actual film, but we did do screenings. And so when he talked about those, I don't think they do them anymore because everything's like
So probably
digital now,
digital, right?
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there would be like a little circle up in the corner, and that's when the reel was changing. Um, but how brilliant to do that in the actual movie, even
right.
though
It's like
people
metal.
weren't even going
Yeah,
to see it. Yeah, you're doing something
yeah.
that people aren't even going to notice.
Hmm.
But 10 years later, people are talking about because I didn't find out about that till like a decade or two after this film was out, where I read it somewhere. I was like, oh shit, I gotta go back and watch that again. And sure enough, they're there.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't know it until maybe yesterday. I found out about that. So literally,
Oh
so yeah, now
go
I'm gonna
go
have to go
back and
back and
watch
watch it
them.
again. That's so
Seriously.
cool
It
because I probably saw it but
really
didn't think
is.
anything of it. And yeah, again, it's one of those things that's
Yeah.
right there,
Right.
but
It
you
doesn't
don't
even
see it.
register.
Hmm. Yeah, like yeah, like the conversations and the same thing with the Sixth Sense when you see everything
Yeah.
afterwards and yeah.
Right. And
But
and you realize, how did I not notice that no other live person ever speaks to him
yeah.
directly? You
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, you don't even realize it. Yeah, it's crazy. And it was the same thing in Fight Club because then Ed would be talking about Tyler, and then Marlon would be saying, "What are you talking about? Like he's
Yeah.
crazy." But yeah, when you know the twist and you watch it again, you understand why she's being that way.
Yeah. And why she's
All
so
confused.
confused
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
saying, one day you love me, the next day you won't talk to me, and you're so mean, and
Yeah.
you just think she's nuts. But
Mhm.
no, she is reacting to the reality of the situation, and he's seeing something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so well done. And yeah, again, both the book and the movie did it so well. Mhm.
Absolutely. It's scary.
Yeah, because unlike Perks of the Wallflower, where the writer was actually the director, this is a totally different person.
That's true. But it was
And
somebody who's
it did
obviously
so
very skillful
yeah.
and very just someone who had a lot of respect for the source material.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
definitely.
there were moments that places that it diverged. Like there was the scene in the car where toward the end where it was like a limo or something they were in. And I forget there was some pretense of them going somewhere, but it was secondary. They were dodging trucks. They were driving in oncoming traffic
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
I forget what even the purpose was of getting everybody to decide what it is they would do if before they died, if they had a chance,
Yeah.
something like that. It was some other henchman who was driving that car in the book, but they gave that to Tyler
Yeah.
in the film so they could continue their conversation. And I think that's when you really start realizing, are they the same person? Are they,
Right.
that like that's when it starts to break. The
Hmm.
illusion kind of starts to break.
It's
And it's a frightening moment.
yeah.
But I think it was well done. Like if 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 it's an effective change, I'm not I'm not such a purist that I'm against it. I think that was a very effective way to move the story forward a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's very artistic. Yeah, in the book, I think he was calling him the mechanic or something like that.
yeah,
Uh,
that's what it was, the mechanic.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the mechanic was involved in other ways with the Fight Club that, you got a little more detail of like what their assignments were and who was running what part of the organization, I think when you were reading it. So, they slimmed that down a little bit,
yeah,
but just enough so that you knew what was going on in the background.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man, so excited! I want to go watch it again. Read it.
It's true.
It's like one of those things where the more you watch it, the better it gets.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we used this. I'm glad that we used this piece. And I think that there is a Gen X message in here when he talks about our generation. I mean, Brad Pitt in general, I think is a big, Gen X heartthrob. At this point, we're all past our prime. So, he's more of a Gen X guy.
Yeah.
But he talks about we're the middle children of history, meaning, modern history. We had no Great War. Our war is we had no Great Depression. Our depression is a depression of the spirit. Now, the generations to follow us, I think they have worse problems than we did, I'll be honest. But
Yeah.
at this point, he was kind of talking about how meaningless our lives were becoming and how because we didn't have Nazis to fight or the stock market crash, our lives were pretty much buying shit
Hmm.
and never being satisfied with what we have, which is true. But I think that that was very in tune with what was going on in the 80s and 90s. The big, everybody going out and buying all this. They had to have all the coolest furniture and brand name clothing. And it was the same kind of thing that went on in Bret Easton Ellis's books, I think, where those um, both American Psycho and Less Than Zero, they
Hmm.
were all just completely consumed with um, a designer culture, a very
Yeah.
expensive,
Materialistic.
yeah, materialistic society that did not bring anybody any sanity whatsoever.
Right.
It just
Yeah.
made them very detached from any kind of real emotional satisfaction. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's the whole post-Vietnam thing, which was our
yeah,
generation. Yeah. Yep. Um, I think if there's anything else that you need to
I
touch
think we
on.
covered a lot. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
it's kind of an exhausting experience, the whole book. It is.
It's a lot,
The
very
film too.
dense. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
book's not even that long either. I don't think it was
It's true. It was
only just
short.
over 200 pages. Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
so much to it.
It's
Yeah.
true. And I read a little bit. It was originally a short story
All
that
right.
he just extended. So maybe that's
Boy.
why it's a little shorter than your usual novel.
Mhm. I have that written down. I don't know. Yeah, I forgot what. Yeah, because it was a short story. That yeah, then he extended it and made it a screenplay. I forgot what it was. Yeah, because it was in a magazine. Now I can't find what magazine it was in. Damn it! All right. Oh,
Yeah, or an anthology, maybe. I don't know. That the
you're
copy
right.
that I had, like I originally had this book. Once again, a lot of times if there's a book I like, I will give it to someone else. I don't
Mhm.
always have my favorites on the on the
Oh,
bookshelf. So I had
oh,
to rebuy this as well.
yeah.
So the one that I got has like an epilogue similar to what was in Wallflower.
Oh, right. Yep. Yep. It has that. I listened to it on audio, but I also had it on the Kindle, and it had the afterword or something it was called
Yeah,
afterwards. Yeah. So it's
which is very interesting.
yeah.
I
Oh,
enjoyed
and
the afterwards.
yeah, it was the short story was in the 1995 compilation Pursuit of Happiness. Short story became chapter 6 in the final novel, and then he made a full manuscript after getting bored with traditional fiction.
I gotta do that. I gotta pick one of my stories and just extend it.
There you go.
Get on that. And I
Yeah,
gotta
it'd be
find
fun.
chapter 6 and see what was going on. 4. Wait, I'll find it and I'll do that tonight. 5. The chapters are also very short,
Right.
which is kind of cool because it does drive you through the book quickly. I did so I'm I'm thumbing through it. All right, found chapter 6. Okay, I gotta mark that. I did find maybe in on this my second reading, maybe there were moments where I felt the repetition was getting to be a little bit much, but maybe on a fresh reading, that wouldn't be the case. Like if I don't recall that when I first read it. And I don't recall being quite as disturbed by it when I first read it. Once
Right.
again,
Yeah.
you become so much more sensitive
Yeah.
once you've had
You
more
get them.
life experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Again. Yeah. You know, get older. You get a lot of things to see through. So, it's interesting. Yeah. So, yeah. So, is there anything else that
Hmm.
we wanted to?
I think that covered the things that
Yeah.
were on
Like
my
we don't,
mind.
yeah, like we don't have to go over every single thing. Well, hopefully read it by now if they majorly spoiled.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, yeah, so this month's book for June is Saturn's Favorite Music by Laura Lee. So
got to get on that one.
I just started. I'd say that's perfect. It takes place in the 90s, and it centers around a DJ. And I thought
Okay.
it was perfect because it but the author is actually Laura Lee is actually gonna come on with us, and we have Suzanne here, who's an author herself. It also centers on a DJ, and Dell will be back next month, and he's a DJ, so it's like touching
That's
on
true.
all
That's
of
right.
us. So.
He better be on that one.
Yeah,
We miss you, Dell.
yeah, and congratulations to his daughters graduating and
Yeah,
everything. So
yay.
yes, that's very exciting. Yeah, yeah, a lot of us haven't I don't have any children, but a lot of us have kids that are graduating high school and college lately. So, we're at that
Yeah, so
stage.
congrats.
So, yeah, so I just started that book. It's already starting off so good. So, yeah, a lot of pop culture references. I believe it takes place in 1992. So, yeah, a lot of
Okay.
references to the music and just, really throw back to us and just from what I read, she's a really good writer. So it'll be fun
Yeah, she's got a
talking
lot
with
of
her
books out.
personally. Yeah, she
Yeah.
has a lot. Yeah, yeah, very talented. So yeah, so I'm excited for that. It's always fun when well, she'll be the third one. There was you were the first author that we covered
Oh,
their
yeah, that's
book.
right.
Yeah.
I count in this. I count as a guest author.
Yeah. Different hats, yeah. And then we had Diane Franklin and now Laura Lee. So it's gonna be
Nice.
cool. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So look forward to that. And Susie, you want to tell people where they can reach you and find your awesome book?
Yeah, sure. My book is called Once in a Lifetime, like the Talking Head song. It's women's fiction that takes place in the 80s, kind of a cool new wave coming of age story. You can find that on Amazon, or you can look me up at SuzanneMattaboni.com, or there's a once in a lifetime novel.com site where you can take a look. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram as well. So, you can take a look at some of the fun things that are going on there. And yeah, working on some new short stories and such and pushing things along.
Exciting. And then yeah, it looks like you've been making appearances. Do you have anything else coming up? If anybody's gonna be, I mean, Are you on
Well,
pause
I
right now?
will be at the American Library Association show in Philadelphia at the end of June. If you are not a librarian, though, I don't know if people are going to just be stopping in there, but I will be there, talking to people from libraries from across the country. So
Let's go.
if you're there, come say hello.
And you can find me at GenX Journeys, all the socials, uh, Instagram, Facebook especially. So, and then you can reach me at paul at genxjourneys.net if you have any book suggestions, you want to talk about any books that we've covered or whatnot. So I'd love to hear from you. So, yeah, so we'll see you next month with Saturn's favorite music. Bye.
Sounds good.